I'm standing backstage alone, waiting for the performance to start. I can hear my heart in my ears as it tries to pound out of my chest. I'm at the world's largest theater festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, presenting my original one-woman play, and I haven't performed in front of an audience in over 7 years. I hear the crowd begin to fill their seats from my position just behind the curtain, and then the lights go down, my cue to enter signaled. I take a deep breath and enter the darkened stage. What happens next is a mix of magic and terror, but every second of it worth it. That night in Edinburgh taught me and reminded me that taking risks is vital to our experience as human beings. When I'm taking a risk, it always connects me to my whole self. As Helen Keller said, security is mostly a superstition. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. I didn't start out a natural actor, and I don't make my living as an actor now. But I do hold a Ph.D. in theater, and I use theater to teach my clients emotional intelligence and collaboration. But I didn't start out that way. And actually, if it weren't for the foresight of my incredibly supportive mother, I may have walked through life afraid of taking risks. At age 7, I was an incredibly expressive and outgoing and imaginative child in the safety of my solitude. At school, I suffered a petrifying shyness, so extreme that if I were asked to stand and speak in front of my classmates, I would turn bright red and start to hyperventilate. You see, I'm the daughter of an alcoholic father who was prone to nightly fits of rage and whose alcoholism cost him his job. He was unemployed for over a year, so between dodging his fits and occasionally his fists, my mother had to cut corners to stretch our savings as long as she could. And the fear of my classmates discovering my secret kept me from being my whole self at school. My mother, Lynn, is one of the strongest women I have ever known. But she also suffered from shyness and a fear of what other people thought of her, particularly in this moment in our lives. And she recognized the impact that our secret private life was having on my confidence, and she decided to do something about it. Her answer? Enroll me in acting classes. I still remember that first day of acting class like it was yesterday. I was sitting in a circle quietly with about 15 other children my age, all strangers to me, and my worst nightmare was imagined. We were asked to introduce ourselves and say something that we like to do for fun. I felt the blood start to rush to my face and my breath quicken. I heard nothing that the other students said as I rehearsed over and over and over again in my mind what I was going to say. By the time my turn arrived, I must have looked like I was on the verge of having a heart attack at age 7. But my mother encouraged me to stick with it, and I did. And I loved it. Why? Because after that terrifying first moment, the teacher introduced us to our first improv game. As soon as I realized that theater school was all about playing games, I relaxed and gave in to the thrill of my imagination. What I didn't realize at the time was that those games were preparing us for the real work of theater, building a community and an atmosphere of trust so that we could feel free to take risks together. That's what I learned from the theater. Not only the value of risk-taking, but also to understand that the success of the risk you take is dependent on 2 crucial factors. First, building a skill set to support that risk through training. And second, cultivating a community of support and an atmosphere of trust within that support group. It's not about luck. When I finished my PhD, the weight of the 2008 economic collapse hit the world of academia, and there were absolutely zero jobs to be found. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I had to cast a wide net. Then the email came from a small technical school in New York City asking if I could interview in person the next day to teach a class that was set to start the following week. I asked if we could push that interview a couple of days, and I made my way to New York. And they offered me the job. I met a friend at a bar for some wine later, and celebrating the start of my new life in New York City. And a few glasses of wine later, I found myself boarding a train back to New Jersey, where I was staying with my friends. And I glanced out the window and saw the lights of the city slowly floating away. And as they faded, and my reflection came into view, the harsh lights of the overhead fluorescents casting dark shadows on my face, I burst into tears. Because as exciting as the idea of living in the city was, I was only offered a job to teach a single class. Not nearly enough money to live in the city. And my friends were very generous, but I didn't have more than 2 nickels to my name at the time, and the cost of the commute to and from the city alone was beyond my ability. I looked at my reflection again, tears streaming down my face, and I thought, okay, you get 5 minutes on your pity pot, and then you gotta snap out of it. And when you get home, you're gonna come up with a plan. And I did. I trusted that the skills that I had built to get me that far would land me on my feet somehow. And by the time that class started, I had another job offer, not in academia, but it was going to pay the bills. From there, I was able to leverage my skill set and, more importantly, my network to get my foot in the door at some of New York's top institutions. And that brings me to my second point. I learned that I didn't have to leap blindly and without a net to take a risk. I surrounded myself with an incredible support group of people that I trusted to push me forward. Although I built a thriving career in New York, I was teaching at the drama department at NYU, teaching full-time at Mercy College in Westchester, and I had earned the respect of the theater community. I started to feel like I was living to teach the same classes over and over again. My career felt stalled out, and I needed to take another leap. Then a confluence of events happened. I reconnected with a couple of friends who had moved to London. I got turned down for a full-time position teaching at NYU. And my father passed away. The day I got the call from my brother that Dad passed, I was on another train, this time heading back into Manhattan from Westchester. The train slinked along the banks of the Hudson River, the spring just starting to pop up from underneath the winter frost, and I found myself unable to cry. Reflecting on my father's life, I realized I didn't have any time to waste, and I needed to make a change. London became my second home, and my friends Janet and Eden, both very well connected in the theater community, had offered me an open door in their homes anytime I wanted to visit. And they introduced me to a new circle of friends in London, all involved in film and theater. And between reading their scripts and absorbing all of the brilliant live theater London has to offer, I remembered an idea I had for a play before I moved to New York. Creating that play I took to Edinburgh happened fast. But the events that allowed it to unfold quickly and successfully were entirely due to my brilliant network of friends, all of whom knew what it meant to take a leap to grasp that creative dream. I wrote the first draft of the play in Janet's cozy flat in North London over many hot cups of tea. Within days of completing that first draft, I was asked to submit to a new play workshop at a major London theater. Janet strongly encouraged me to apply for it, but that shy 7-year-old that still lives inside of me said, no, they don't want you. You're not at that level yet. But my friends persisted and encouraged me to apply, so I submitted a proposal, and I was accepted. I had to work furiously on writing revisions, and my friends all reached out to find actors to perform for me. But everything came together beautifully, and within a short period of time, I found myself in a room full of about 30 of London's up-and-coming playwrights and directors, sharing my heart. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and I was encouraged to take the play to the Edinburgh Festival. But again, that inner monologue dominated. No, not yet, maybe next year. You're not there yet. But then a member of my newfound network sent me information about a competition for best new play to send to Edinburgh. My friends rallied me again, and I applied. And I was accepted as a finalist. Top 10 out of over 100 applicants. I didn't win, but as the results were being announced, I glanced around the room and I realized that I was surrounded by this remarkable group of women and a few men who had pushed me to get this far. And in that moment, I committed to take the play to Edinburgh no matter the result of the competition. And that brings me back to where I started this talk. I may have performed alone that night in Edinburgh, but I was not truly alone when I stepped on that stage. The force of will and the actual physical labor as well of my friends made that moment possible. Not all of the risks I've taken have worked out, but the stories that I've shared of times when they did had two crucial factors in common. I built a skill set to make sure I would land on my feet even if that risk failed. And I cultivated a network of support and people that I trusted to push me forward. The people you surround yourself with matter. It's not about luck. And I do have to say, not all, even the risks that I've taken that have failed brought me to a place that I never thought I would be and helped me grow. Taking risks for me helps me become my whole self that I never thought I could be as a child, afraid to say my name in a room full of strangers. So I will leave you tonight with some wise words from Neil Gaiman. If you dare nothing, then at the end of the day, nothing will be all that you've gained. Thank you.